Welcome back to the community of independent thinkers. Thank you for being here. Today, we are going to strip away the dense fog of lies and the hollow diplomatic platitudes plastered across the mainstream media to look at a ruthless reality. The elites in Washington are buzzing with celebration. They are telling you that the joint U.S.-Israeli strike campaign against Iran was a flawless surgical victory. They claim we successfully neutralized their ballistic missile stockpiles, dismantled their air defenses, and disarmed Tehran. They call it deterrence. They call it restoring the rules-based order. Do not buy it. What we are actually witnessing is not a victory. It is strategic suicide. It is the complete collapse of a superpower being dragged into a brutal quagmire, willingly setting its own future on fire to serve the survival interests of another state. Let me be clear. We have to tear down the most dangerous illusion dominating Washington right now, the illusion of goal alignment between the United States and Israel. The Trump administration is sending incredibly chaotic and inconsistent signals. They are trying to declare a premature victory based on the destruction of a few military facilities, hoping they can wash their hands and bring this to an end much sooner than the Israelis would like. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Netanyahu makes no secret of his ambition to continue prosecuting this campaign until the regime in Tehran is completely crushed. This is not a minor tactical disagreement. This is a massive structural divide in power dynamics. Israel is a small country surrounded by hostile forces, living in constant existential fear of an implacable enemy sworn to their destruction. For them, overthrowing Tehran and dealing a fatal blow to Hezbollah in Lebanon is a ruthless but entirely understandable logic of survival. They want to chop down the root of the threat, but look at the United States. We are a nation protected by two giant moats. Our core strategic interests do not depend on who holds power in Tehran. To understand why Washington tailgating Tel Aviv's regime change ambitions is a death warrant, you have to dissect the destructive mechanism of nation-building wars. The last 30 years of American foreign policy is a long, tragic string of hubris and imperial graveyards. Look at Iraq. We went in there with the incredibly naive belief that we would bring democracy, only to shatter the entire regional power structure, creating massive power vacuums that birthed terrorist groups tearing each other apart. Look at Libya. We bombed a dictator and turned that country into a giant open-air slave market, an incubator of chaos spreading across North Africa. And look at our endless, disastrous efforts in Syria. Every single time we take a sledgehammer to a sovereign state in the Middle East with the delusion of rebuilding it, we get a bloodbath. Now they want to do the exact same thing to Iran, a country vastly larger, more populous, and with infinitely more formidable terrain. If the regime in Tehran falls, what awaits us is not peaceful parades on the streets. It will be a highly chaotic scenario, a bloody civil war lasting decades. It means massive migration flows that will destabilize Europe and our Gulf allies. America will be sucked into dealing with all of those problems, bled dry of blood and treasure, to clean up a ruin of our own making, while Israel simply washes its hands and walks away satisfied because its primary enemy is gone. We are acting as the most expensive mercenaries in history, paying the ultimate price with the blood and treasure of our own citizens. Here is the rub. The most ruthless aspect of this game is not found at the barrel of a gun. It is the economic guillotine currently hanging over the global economy. The liberal hawks in Washington always display a bizarre blindness to the power of geography. They actually shared this overly optimistic assessment that decapitating Iran's senior leadership on day one and applying sustained pressure would paralyze the country and inspire the Iranian people to rise up. Utterly naive. Even a vastly weakened, cornered beast still has cards to play. Look at the Thailand-flagged cargo ship burning in the Strait of Hormuz right now. This is not a maritime traffic accident. This is the weaponization of strategic choke points. Nearly 20% of the global oil supply passes through this narrow bottleneck. Iran does not need a navy on par with the United States to win. They just need to lay mines, launch cheap drones into the Gulf, or fire missiles to harass ships. The mechanism is incredibly simple but physically devastating. Once a few ships catch fire, maritime insurance premiums skyrocket to unthinkable levels. Shipping corporations suspend the route. Global supply is strangled instantly. Oil will not stop at $100 a barrel. It could shoot up to $150, maybe $200. Inflation will rip through the Western economy, creating a massive global economic crisis. Manufacturing plants will grind to a halt. American and European workers will pay this bloody price in their own pocketbooks every single time they pump gas or buy groceries. Meanwhile, the policy-making elites sit safely in their air-conditioned offices, watching President Trump insist and even threaten NATO nations to send warships to police a strait for a crisis we ignited. Going to our European allies we did not consult before the campaign began, allies we have spent the last year stoking tensions with and slapping tariffs on, and demanding they shoulder the risk of protecting this energy artery is an act of blatant diplomatic extortion. This brings us to an even deeper layer of the structural tragedy, revealing who truly benefits from Western foolishness. In great power politics, every action you take in one corner of the world is watched, calculated, and exploited by your peer competitors on the other side. Look over at Beijing and Moscow. Right now, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are smiling. Why? Because we are voluntarily bleeding ourselves dry on a secondary non-core front. America's weapons manufacturing capacity is not infinite. It consists of physical industrial lines with hard, clear limits. Every Patriot air defense battery, every $1 million interceptor missile we fire into the Middle Eastern sky to shoot down cheap Iranian drones is an asset that takes years to produce and is therefore not available for Europe or the Pacific. We are burning through ship time afloat, extending maintenance schedules, and depleting precision munitions. If this conflict extends, how exactly will the United States maintain the material capability to compete with China in the Indo-Pacific or protect Taiwan? We cannot. We are handing regional hegemony in East Asia to Beijing on a silver platter. Simultaneously, a spike to $100 a barrel oil or higher pumps billions of dollars of lifeblood directly into Russia's war machine, allowing them to address their economic crisis and refuel for a much longer war in Ukraine. We are cutting off our own limbs in front of our most dangerous adversaries. We are locked into a wheel of fate that cannot be easily stopped. The internal political calculus in Washington, combined with the reality that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not going to simply defy a ceasefire and stop if his political survival depends on weakening his enemies, has locked America into a disastrous path dependence. The United States, due to the hubris of refusing to acknowledge the limits of its own power and its failure to explain to the American public why we are even doing this, will continue to be dragged from one crisis to another. They talk about a rules-based order, but the reality is unconditional submission to chaos, a bleeding economy, a military stretch to the absolute breaking point, and true strategic adversaries growing stronger every single day on the ashes of this blind intervention. Stay safe, stay awake, and never stop questioning the lies of the elite. The ruthless truth is always out there, waiting for those brave enough to look it in the eye. I will see you next time.